Good afternoon, History Geeks. I am here at the tomb of Thomas Lord Fairfax. For those of you who do not know who Lord Fairfax is, he was the first mentor of George Washington and his first employer. So as you know, George Washington was a surveyor in the beginning. He surveyed the Shenandoah Valley, and Lord Fairfax employed him. And so we're going to take a look at his tomb, and then we're going to take a look at Lord Fairfax's background and history. So this is Lord Fairfax's grave. So I'm just going to turn the camera around and read off the plaque on the top here, so you guys get an idea of what it says. So this is a plaque they made for Lord Fairfax. I'm going to read it off to you. Under the spot repose the remains of Thomas, 6th Lord Fairfax of Cameron, son of Thomas, 5th Lord Fairfax, and Catherine Culpeper, his wife, born in Leeds Castle, County Kent, England, October 22nd, 1693. Died at his proprietary of the Northern Neck in Virginia, December 9th, 1781. In the 89th year of his age, he was buried in the original Frederick Parish Church at the corner of Loudon, Main and Boscawen Water Streets, whence his remains were removed to this church in 1828, where they were reinterred in 1925 when this tablet was erected by the vestry of Christ Church. So at this time, we're going to delve into Lord Fairfax's family history and then move on to his friendship with George Washington. Lord Fairfax's full name was Thomas Fairfax, the 6th Lord of Cameron. He was born on October 22nd, 1693 at Leeds Castle in Kent, England. He was the eldest son and heir of Thomas Fairfax, 5th Lord Fairfax of Cameron. His father was born on April 16, 1657. After the Glorious Revolution in 1688, his father was appointed Lieutenant Colonel of Lord Castleton's Regiment of Foot, a new regiment raised to fight in the 9 Years' War. In 1694, William III made him Colonel of a Regiment of Foot, and he was promoted to Brigadier in 1696, shortly before the Treaty of Ryswick ended the war in 1697. He left military service in 1703 as a Major General. So, we're going to delve a little further into the Fairfax family. The 6th Lord of Fairfax was the second great-grandson of Thomas Fairfax, 1st Lord of Cameron. As a young man, his second great-grandfather saw military service in the Low Countries, where he commanded a company of foot under Sir Francis Vere. Before and after the death of Mary, Queen of Scots, he was employed by Queen Elizabeth on several diplomatic communications with James VI of Scotland. James offered him a title which he declined. In 1586, he offered his services to James to suppress a rebellion under Lord Maxwell. On the death of Queen Elizabeth, he was with his 6 of his nearest kindred, one of the first Englishmen who went to Scotland to swear fealty to the new king. The 5th Lord of Fairfax was also the cousin of the famous Civil War leader Thomas Fairfax, the 3rd Lord Fairfax of Cameron. The 3rd Lord Fairfax of Cameron was an English politician, general, and parliamentary commander-in-chief during the English Civil War. An adept and talented commander, Fairfax led Parliament to many victories, notably the crucial Battle of Neseby, becoming effectively military ruler of England. He was eventually overshadowed by his subordinate, Oliver Cromwell, who was more politically adept and radical in action against Charles I. Soon after, Fairfax became unhappy with Cromwell's policy and publicly refused to take part in Charles' show trial. Eventually, he resigned, leaving Cromwell to control the country. Because of this, and also his honorable battlefield conduct and his active role in the restoration of the monarchy after Cromwell's death, he was exempted from the retribution exacted on many other leaders of the revolution. That is a short family history of the Fairfaxes. So now that we have a little more background on the Fairfaxes, we're going to go back to the 6th Lord of Fairfax, who was granted land in Virginia. By 1719, the castle, along with the other lands in England, as well as a land grant known as the Northern Neck in Virginia, was granted to the 6th Lord Fairfax, Thomas Fairfax. The land grant in Virginia consisted of a little over 5 million acres. These lands included a great portion of the Shenandoah and South Branch Potomac valleys. Besides being from a wealthy aristocratic family, Fairfax was also a military man. From 1721 to 1733, he held a commission in the Royal Horse Guards, which is now the Blues and Royals. Later on in his life, Lord Fairfax traveled to Virginia for the first time between 1735 and 1737 to inspect and protect his lands. He left back to England for a short time and then returned to stay in Virginia in 1747. He first settled at Belvoir, which is now a present-day U.S. military post named Fort Belvoir. Colonel Fairfax, who was Lord Fairfax's first cousin, completed the estate 6 years earlier before Lord Fairfax arrived. In 1748, Lord Fairfax met George Washington for the first time. At the time, George was 16 years old. A little-known fact is that George was a distant relative of the Yorkshire Fairfax family. Impressed with Washington's energy and talents, Lord Fairfax employed Washington, which would become Washington's first employment, to survey Lord Fairfax's lands lying west of the Blue Ridge Mountains. While employed under Fairfax, Washington developed great affection and respect for Lord Fairfax. According to the Mount Vernon website, Washington aspired to be like Fairfax, socially prominent, well-connected, and involved in important affairs. During his employment, Washington lived in Winchester, Virginia, and received a commission and command of the Virginia Regiment. Fairfax, a lifelong bachelor, moved out to Greenway Court, Shenandoah Valley in 1752. At the suggestion of his nephew, Thomas Bryan Martin, who fixed his residence at a hunting lodge near a place called White Post, Clark County. Here, Fairfax and Martin lived together in a style of liberal hospitality. During this time, Washington was a frequent visitor to Greenway Court and became familiar with the northern Shenandoah Valley. Washington's friendship with and sponsorship by Lord Fairfax was instrumental in the young man's rise to political and social prominence. The two frequently went fox hunting at Belvoir on the Potomac. Fairfax supported Washington's successful bid for election to the House of Burgesses in 1758, writing that, "I fear Colonel Washington will be very hard pushed in the three-way race." Washington won the election in 1758 and represented Frederick County until 1765. That year he ran in Fairfax County, winning the seat, which he would retain until 1775. Fairfax also tried unsuccessfully to get Washington a seat on the Governor's Council in the early 1770s. Once the American Revolution started, Lord Fairfax remained a loyalist at heart for personal, ideological, and monetary reasons. He managed to avoid expropriation of his lands by the Patriot Virginia government, possibly because of Washington's protection. During the Revolution, Washington kept tabs on the old man. At one point, Fairfax became ill. Washington wrote about this incident from Valley Forge in March of 1778. Lord Fairfax, as I have been told, after having bowed down to the grave and in a manner shaken hands with death, is perfectly restored and enjoys his usual good health and as much vigor as falls to the lot of 90. In December 1778, Washington wrote to Fairfax from camp in Middlebrook, New Jersey, to complain of the encroachment onto his Fairfax County lands of a neighbor, Thomas and Elsie. Washington explained, "I am persuaded that I need to do nothing more than to bring your lordship acquainted with these facts. I neither hold nor claim lands that have not been paid for to your lordship by quit rent. I repose too much confidence in your known justice to harbor a moment's doubt that Fairfax would stop Elsie's claim." The matter was apparently resolved soon after. On October 19, 1781, the Battle of Yorktown proved to be the decisive engagement of the American Revolution. Even though there were 2 more years of war, the British surrender there forecasted the end of British rule in the colonies and the birth of a new nation, the United States of America. By the time the Americans won the Battle of Yorktown, the Baron was in his 80s and was careful to express no opposition to the revolution or its leader. The Bachelor Baron of Northern Neck died December 7, 1781, at Greenway Court, having lived to see the achievement of American independence made possible by his young protégé, George Washington. Well, History Geeks, we are near the end of this video, and at this time I'd like to share my thoughts with you on this story. While I have been working on this video, I've learned a lot about the English Civil War that I didn't know. I have traced some of my ancestors back to the English Civil War, so I've learned quite a bit. I also learned a lot about the Fairfax family I didn't know. Fairfax family seemed to be very prominent, very respected and honorable, and from what I can see, they stood up for what they believe in, no matter what the consequences, and I think that's a great characteristic. So I also learned a lot about George Washington and his youth, primarily in his younger days. One thing that I did know that most of you probably are aware of is that George Washington lost his father when he was very young. When George Washington was very young, his father died. And he really didn't have a father figure except for his brother. So when Lord Fairfax came along, in my opinion, it looks like Lord Fairfax took him under his wing. He employed him, and he treated him like his son. And so I thought that that was very, very honorable of him. I also felt near the end of the story that this was very heartfelt and emotional about the two men kind of grew apart from each other on where they felt that the country and or colonies were going. But the good news is they still respected each other and they still stayed friends throughout the war, and they protected each other. And I thought that that was just so amazing that they continued to stay friends. So now that I've shared a little bit with you, we're going to take a look now at Greenway Court. I've talked a lot about it in the video, and I can't wait to show you this place. So let's take a look at it. So this is what Lord Fairfax would have seen from his house. Of course, he owned 5 million acres, so there's a lot more. And if we scan over to the left here, this is the road that George Washington would have taken to Lord Fairfax's house. Looks like it still hasn't been paved, which is really interesting. Still gives you a good idea of what it would have just looked like. And if we pan over here, he would have just went up here to the house, and right now it's a private residence. They told me that I could take the video, so which is good. But yeah, so this is it. You can kind of see the house in the background. I got some close-up pictures if they'll let me take, but that's about it. So hope you guys enjoyed this. I will talk to you later.